We've learned together that a city that was walled since the days of Yehoshua ben Nun reads the Megillah on the 15th of Adar, as opposed to all other cities, except for Shushan, which read the Megillah on the 14th of Adar. Now, it's accepted that the city of Yerushalayim, the old city at least, was walled already in the days of Yehoshua ben Nun, and therefore they read on the 15th of Adar. And what I'd like to consider is, what should the halacha be for the new city of Yerushalayim? The rest of Yerushalayim, that which is outside the old city, the walls of the old city. Not to suggest the walls that we have now were the walls in the days of Yehoshua ben Nun, but that area, at least parts of it, are assumed to be that they were walled in the days of Yehoshua ben Nun. But what about outside of those walls? And we can ask about the areas that are immediately outside the walls, but Yerushalayim is a big city. There's many neighborhoods. It spreads out. And when should people living in Yerushalayim read the Megillah for Purim? Now we learned on Daf Beis Amud Beis 2b, the Gemara first brought that it brought from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It said krach v'chol hasamuch lo v'chol hanira imo nidon kikrach. That not just the walled city itself, but also any part that is either samuch lo, if it's nearby, and if it is nira imo, if it is visible with it. And we said, what is considered nearby? So nearby, the Gemara says, is within a mill. Within a mill, which I think in practical terms is slightly less than a mile. So then it would read if it says a village nearby. So then they could the Gemara doesn't actually use the exact words, and you'll see why it's important, but the Gemara just says a krach, a city, v'kol hasamuch, anything that's near it, v'chol hanirimo, and anything that's visible along with it. So near is within a mill, and visible along with it. Now the Gemara on Daf Gimel Amud Beis 3b, then it brought this statement again, and it elaborated on it, and it says, Samuch afal pi she'eino nira afal pi she'eino samuch. If it's nearby, even if it's not visible, and if it's visible, even if it's not nearby. It just needs one or the other, and then it would follow the rule of the walled city, and it would read on the 15th. The Gemara asked, what's the case? It's like, I understand where something could be visible, even if it's not close by. You can have that one of them is on a mountain. The large city is on a mountain. They have a great view. Anything that they could see, so the villages that are visible, would be considered nira and would also read on the 15th. But the Gemara asked, but where do we have a case where something would be close by but not visible? And the Gemara explained the case would be if the villages are in a valley. If you have a city and then a large city, a walled city, and then you have some space, and then it drops down, and it could be within a mill, but the villages are in the valley, and they wouldn't be able to see them, but as long as they're samuch, as long as they're within a mill, they would still also read on the 15th. Okay, so I think that's, for now at least, what we need to begin our discussion about Yerushalayim nowadays. Now, the Shulchan Aruch brings down the halacha in the following way. The Shulchan Aruch says, the villages that can be seen with the large city, afilu einam smuchim, even if they're not so close, kigon shehem bahar, like one is on the villages are, in this case actually saying the villages are on the mountain. I don't think it really matters. One is on the mountain, one is not on the mountain. They could see each other. O shesmuchim lahem, or they're close by, even if they can't be seen together. Kigon shehem ba'emek, like the villages are in the valley. So all of those would read on the 15th. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, as long as they're not more than a mill distant. Now it sounds like maybe all of these need to be within a mill, even the ones that are, you could have read that it's going back even on the ones that are close, even though they're not visible. That's actually, the ones that are visible, even though they're not close, we might be saying, but they still have to be within a mil. And it doesn't seem to fit so well in the Gemara, but there is an opinion like that, who has a way of reading the Gemara that that's the case, that everything has to be within a mil. And, but that's, not necessarily the accepted position, and we're going to leave that possibility aside and assume that one or the other is fine. Either samuch, either nearby within a mil, or visible, even if it's not within a mil. Either of those would follow and read on the 15th. So, so what would you do in a situation like Yerushalayim? So here you have the walled city, and then you have the this large city of Yerushalayim around that small walled city. So certainly the places in the new city that are visible to the old city will certainly read on the 15th, based on what we just said, and also the ones that are within a mil. Those would also certainly read on the 15th. But what about the parts of the city of Yerushalayim, of the new Yerushalayim, that are outside of a mil, or are not visible from the old city? So, so here we have that basically the accepted minhag of the poskim. This was the position of the Chazon Ish and some of the earlier rabbanim of Yerushalayim as well. I think like the Maharil Diskin, or Yerushalayim Diskin, and maybe Rav Shmuel Salat. Many of the earlier rabbanim of Yerushalayim said that that as long as part of the city is within a mil or is visible, so the whole city reads on the 15th. Even the parts that are not within a mil or not visible, but it's one big city, and once parts of it read on the 15th, the whole city reads on the 15th. And that's basically the accepted custom, is that people throughout Yerushalayim read on the 15th. Just like the walled city, just like the part that was walled since the days of Yoshua ben Nun. The question becomes, is that for sure what they should be doing? Or maybe is there reason lahachmir, is there reason to be stringent and read also on the 14th, just in case? Because maybe parts of Yerushalayim should not be reading on the 15th, but should be reading on the 14th. Is there a reason to be machmir? And maybe to add another layer, we say the entire city follows the custom of once it's one city, it's one big city, they all read on the 15th. But what's considered part of the city? Let's say you have the city ends, and then you have like a neighborhood that's a little bit outside the city, but it's connected by an Eruv. It's connected by doorways of Tzuras HaPesach, the way we make an Eruv with strings. So in Hilchos Shabbos, in terms of the laws of Shabbos, it's considered part of the city, but it's not really part of the city. There's a lot of space in between. So would an area like that be considered part of Yerushalayim and kind of dragged after the rest of Yerushalayim that they would read on the 15th? So these are major discussions in the poskim. I want to go through what Rav Moshe Sternbuch writes about in his Sefer Moadim Muzmanim. Maybe we'll mention some other possibilities. So he's dealing with this question. He knows there are those who are stringent. Maybe he himself also, he mentions that to read in Yerushalayim in general on the 14th as well, lehachmir, just on the, to be concerned for the possibility that really they should be reading on the 14th. So, and he wants to address, is there really reason, lehachmir, what might be a reason to be stringent and read on the 14th, just in case? So, his first suggestion is that if you read the way the Shulchan Aruch and really the Torah, the earlier sort of Rishonim, bring down this idea that the places around a walled city follow the walled city. So what the Shulchan Aruch says, he says, "V'chein kakfarim hanir mimayim," the villages that are visible along with the walled city. And that makes it sound like only if it's a village, if it's a smaller city that's around the walled city, so then they would follow the custom of the walled city and read on the 15th. But the implication is that in Ir Gedola, a large city, would not be dragged after and be buttal and be nullified by the walled city that it's close to or visible to, and a large city would actually not follow that small walled city that's nearby, and a large city would do like a normal unwalled city and would read on the 14th. And that might be a reason, just in case, to be stringent, because if you take the literal words of the Shulchan Aruch that way and the Torah, then that's a reason to be stringent to read in Yerushalayim on the 14th. And he says he saw this in other Svarim, the Torah Rafal or Rafal Shapiro, and that's one reason lehachmir. On the other hand, one could say that, like I mentioned earlier, we don't know exactly which parts of Yerushalayim were walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun. We have what's walled now, but it could be there are parts of the new city, areas in the new city, that were actually walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun. And now, he says still, even still, in those spots, if we knew that there were parts of the new city that used to be walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun, certainly those areas would indeed have to read on the 15th. And then you can say that there, in that case, you have this larger Ir Chadasha, this new city. It's not just because it's in that big city itself. There are parts that read on the 15th because they were walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun. And if that's the case, then there's no reason to differentiate. Meaning the whole reason we said maybe lahachmir was because you have the old city, and then you have this, which was walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun, and then you have this large city outside, and we'll say, but the large city is not buttal, not nullified, and doesn't follow the smaller city. Okay, but if you say that in the large city itself there were parts that were walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun, maybe there were parts that, and it makes sense that there were parts that go beyond our walls right now. It's certainly a possibility. So then this large city has parts that were walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun. The rest of that large city will follow. It's one big city. Will follow and will also read on the 15th. And then there's no reason lahachmer. There's no reason to be stringent to read on the 14th. That makes sense. The minhag that we have to just read on the 15th, and there's no reason lahachmer. There's no reason to be stringent to read on the 14th. However, he says there's still a reason to be stringent. Again, he's going back and forth, and that's because there is a position that one can say that no, we don't take the whole city and say that well, if part of the city is doing it on the 15th, then the rest of the city does the same thing. Rather, it's possible that we could split up one city. The parts that are either walled from the days of Yeshua ben Nun, or it's also possible there are no parts of the new city that were walled in the days of Yeshua ben Nun, but parts that are near or visible to the old city. So those sections of Yerushalayim would read on the 15th because they're near and visible to a walled city. But maybe we do split the city in half and say, okay, up until here you read on the 15th. From here on, it's not visible, it's not within a mil. You read on the 14th. So according to that, and there are some poskim who say like that, there would be reason to be stringent, at least in the parts that are beyond a mil and not visible to the old city. So in those parts, it would make sense, just to be careful, for extra care, to lahachmir and to read on the 14th just in case. And he says, so it makes sense, this chumrah. And so some have this chumrah. It sounds like he might have had this chumrah, and and so there's reason perhaps to read on the 14th. He says, however, one should be careful if they are going to read La'achmir just in case on the 14th, that they should do so al tanai. They should make a condition, and they should say, because if the ideal is to read on the 15th, and you could still just be yotze b'diavad by reading early, you could be, so then, but you don't want to be yotze b'diavad, you want to do it in the best way. So he says that if one is going to just, out of a stringency, read also on the 14th in Yerushalayim, so they should make a tanai, they should make a condition, and rather they should say that before they read, they should say explicitly, he says, and they should tell everybody listening, he says, if we are like a walled city, like a large city, and we're not part of the walled city, and we're not supposed to follow the walled city, so then I want to be yotze, I want to fulfill my obligation today on the 14th, and if I'm not, if I'm really obligated to read on the 15th, I don't want to be yotze today, it should just be a reading for the just in case. And I think this reading would be done anyways with the Arab Bracha because it's just in case. And he says that that's what he would do. That's what he would do when he would read in Yerushalayim on the 14th. He would make that tonight. Okay, so that's it's a chumrah, it's a stringency, but the Rav Sternbuch is arguing that there's good reason for that stringency. Again, I don't think it's the common practice to be stringent and read on the 14th, but yesh makam lahachmir. There's reason to consider such a stringency. What about the case that we mentioned of a place that it's really outside the city, but it's connected by the Erev? And the example that Rav Sternbuch deals with is Hadassah Hospital in Ein HaKerem. Or really, it's kind of past the area of Ein HaKerem. I think it's called Hadassah Ein HaKerem. But the bottom line is, it's not near. It's outside of Yerushalayim. There's like forest in between. They apparently it's connected by an Erev, but it's really not so close. So is the Erev enough to make it? If we follow the logic that again, like the minhag is Yerushalayim reads on the 15th, and they read on the 15th because since parts of it are either close to the old city or visible to the old city, or maybe even parts of it were walled in the days of Yoshua ben Nun, so therefore they read on the 15th. The whole city gets, it's one city, and they follow if part of it is reading the 15th, the whole city reads on the 15th. But what about this? Is this considered part of the city if it's joined by an Erev? So Rav Sternbuch takes the position that it is not part of Yerushalayim, and he says that there are those who said that they should read on the 15th, and that's what many did and do. But that's specifically why he wrote a letter. Apparently, he writes in the newspapers that they should not be reading on the 15th. They should be reading on the 14th. And that's because the whole idea of the Tzuras HaPesach, of making doorways with strings and making an Erev like that, it works specifically where the rabbi said it works. It's a rabbinic intervention where you have a karmelis. A karmelis is an area that you're not allowed to carry, but only midrabanan you're not allowed to carry. Rabbinically, it's forbidden to carry there. And they gave a way to get around it, and the rabbi said you can't carry there, and they said, but if you make an Erev, you could carry there. But that's where it works, specifically in a situation like that. It also works to extend a tchum, but that's also d'Rabbanan. Extend the area where a person can go on Shabbos or Yom Tov, but that's only midrabanan also. But to say that it works for Megillah, he says, which is Divrei Kabbalah, comes from the Nevi'im, but to extend it and say that it unites it into one city, that he doesn't think so. And he says, even if you would say that that's possible, but it's still a suffix, it's still a doubt, and if we're in doubt, whenever we have a doubt, we're going to do this Gemara soon, whenever we have a doubt, if you read on the 14th and the 15th, the halacha is a real doubt, a real bona fide doubt, as opposed to what we were discussing before, where really we read in Yerushalayim on the 15th. That's the halacha, and we're choshesh for the 14th, but there we make the bracha on the 15th. But if we have a bona fide doubt, so then the halacha is you read on the 14th with the bracha, and read on the 15th without a bracha. So he says that in this area of Hadassah Hospital, they should, if they only read on the 15th, it's possible that they're missing the mitzvah, and really they should read on the 14th with the bracha, and on the 15th they could read just in case. And he says that he saw brought down from the Stipler, from Rabbi Yaakov Kanievsky, that he also said that they should read on the 14th with the bracha, and because the Erev does not make it part of Yerushalayim, and therefore, our publicized, says Rav Sternbuch, that's what they should be doing. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach disagreed. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Mincha Shlomo, Chelek Beis Siman Nun Zayin, says that he heard about this psak, this ruling of Rav Sternbuch, and he'd like to speak to him basically about it because he doesn't agree. He says that if it's connected by an Erev, by Turas HaPesach, then it certainly becomes part of the city, and especially in light, he says that it's really part of the city. He quotes a language of the Mishnah Berurah, the Sharat Zion, that a place that's mishtatef inmo b'inyanav, a place that they work together. It's part of the city. It may not be physically part of the city, but it's part of the city. It's the hospital servicing. It's a hospital servicing people of Yerushalayim. So it's really, in that sense, the same city, and it's connected by an Erev, and people go back and forth, and he thinks that because of all that, it should be part of the city. He says he doesn't understand why these poskim, or Sternbuch and others, are saying that it's not. It seems clear to him that it is, and and he says that's what we should be ruling, that they should read on the 15th at Hadassah Hospital, and that's how, again, he says he wants to discuss it over. So a lot of interesting questions surrounding places like Yerushalayim and the surrounding neighborhoods. I just want to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention. The first reason that Rav Sternbuch suggested that there's reason to be machmir, to read on the 14th, was because it's possible that when we say that places that are nearby and visible follow the walled city, that's only if it's a village. Because that was the language of Kfarim, but an Ir Gedola, a big city, would not be dragged, would not follow whatever they're doing in the nearby walled city. And that was the first consideration, lahachmir, to be stringent to reading Yerushalayim on the 14th. I should just mention, that's something that Rav Sternbuch brings up. The Mishnah Berurah, though, explicitly brings from poskim not that way. When the Shulchan Aruch says that kfarim, villages that are near or visible to a walled city, read on the 15th, Mishnah Berurah brings down hu adin hayaros, so too cities. It's not just villages, even cities. And so the Mishnah Berurah specifically brings that even a larger city that's near a walled city would be batal, would be nullified, would follow the custom of the walled city. And according to that, it's like the general minhag that Yerushalayim, the large city, the Ir Gedola of Yerushalayim, Ir HaChadasha, the new city, would follow what the walled city is doing and read on the 15th.